Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another episode of Buha's Block. On today's show, I am thrilled to be joined by Jason Timpf of Hoops Tonight and The Volume. This is probably the person I have podcasted with the most over the past couple of years. He's done my show a few times. I've done his show many times, and we always have great Laker conversations. Jason, my man, how you doing today?
It's good to see you. We're like the Lakers from last summer. We're betting on continuity between you and me. We're betting on the reps. We just have so many reps, man. But it's good to see you. Have we talked since the Luka trade?
We have not. I actually was checking our texts, and the last time we had podded was January 25th, so a week before the Luka trade.
Yeah,
and the Lakers were starting to round into form. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were in a very different headspace at that point in time. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I want to, we're at this point in the season, 7 games left for the Lakers. I want to keep things relatively big picture here as we look toward the playoffs and just where the Lakers are currently at. But I want to start with last night's game. A big game for the Lakers. It basically was going to determine whether they had a shot at the 2 seed. If they lost that game, they would have been 4 games back of Houston in the loss column. Because they won, they are now just 2 games back of Houston in the loss column. Beat Houston 104-98. I know you did a Lakers-Rockets reaction, and I suggest everybody check that out. But what was your top line takeaway or takeaways from last night's game?
So I thought the Lakers held up really well under Houston's athleticism for the most part. There were some breakthrough moments, a couple of, Amen Thompson plays or Alperen Şengün plays or, Dylan Brooks knocking over Luka and LeBron at various points where you're like, ooh, these guys present some athletic issues for this team. But they were dead even in offensive rebounds. They held them to 13 fast break points. I thought outside of that first quarter, they were pretty damn good in their transition defense. Guys were putting their bodies on the line around the rim and making some plays to blowing up some fast breaks. I thought that the Lakers demonstrated they could do that. But what it reminded me of was the stretch before LeBron got hurt, where the defense was legit and it was holding up regardless of opponent. But it was clearly wearing out their legs and they were struggling to generate offense around that, especially against teams that would switch. And so when I looked at the matchup last night, what I looked at it as is I believe in this team and their ability to defend and to rebound and to get back in transition enough to succeed. But the question is, will they have the stamina to then on the other end of the floor be able to inflict themselves offensively? And so this is why, honestly, I view these last, 7 games left?
7, yeah.
This is why I view these last 7 games as so important. I think the Lakers need to attack these games, not for the standings. At this point, getting out of the play-in is the only thing that should really matter to them. And that they're in a position where as long as they don't completely shit the bed here, they're going to be okay. So with that being the case, I think it's most important for them to just approach this as a chance for conditioning. They're going to, if they stay out of the play-in, after they get done with that game on Sunday, the whatever it is, the 11th or whatever, they'll have at minimum 5 days off before they have to play again. So there's the rest is on the calendar there baked in because of the play-in tournament. So the Houston demonstrated last night that there's a cumulative fatigue element. That Rui Hachimura 3 on the right wing didn't even get to the rim. That Luka had a couple of jumpers in the middle of the floor that were way short. Austin leaving jumpers short. Those guys look tired. And so there's a certain amount of this where I think especially the 2 OKC games will be opportunities for the Lakers to just kind of continue to build towards their playoff level of conditioning so that they can get to the point where their offense can thrive while they're also competing physically.
Yeah, I think my couple takeaways from this are just, I think this is a good matchup for LA. There are really no easy matchups in the West, especially with the projected top 8. I think that's probably going to stand as is, barring an injury or a disaster for one of those teams down the stretch. But I think, I know we're going to get into specific matchups, but I think this is on the easier side for the Lakers. It might be the easiest matchup. They do pose some concerns with their perimeter athleticism and length and whatnot, but I think they have multiple entry points into their defense with Fred VanVleet Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün. And I thought it was telling last night that the Lakers essentially played Şengün off for most of the fourth quarter. He returned at like the 3:30 mark, and Jalen Green was not out there during crunch time. And Houston was kind of having to make offense-defense substitutions and decisions, and they leaned far more into their defense, but I think it affected their offense, and just their crunch time offense was not able to generate, I think, effective looks, and I just didn't really even know what they were trying to run late there, and that's partly why I think Houston, to me, is looking like a higher seed that will be an upset candidate, depending on who they draw in the first round. Second thing, you touched on it. Like I thought that this is the best their defense had looked since LeBron and Rui came back. And I do think part of that is Houston and their offensive limitations. Thought it was way too much Dillon Brooks last night. It felt like he started 1 for 5, then he hit a few shots, but then that was almost a bad thing for Houston, where it just feels like he hijacks their offense and takes like star level shots that he should not be taking. And it's unfortunate for them because I think he's a pretty good defender, and I thought he defended LeBron and Luka fairly well last night and was effective on that end. It's just he takes some wild shots that ultimately are almost like turnovers, in my opinion. And then final thing, I think what this crystallized for me, and this is something I'd be curious to get your take on, is I think obviously to beat the Lakers, you have to be good on both sides of the ball, but I think you have to have a certain level of offense. And I think the teams that are like worse offensively but good defensively, maybe you're like around league average offensively, but like an elite defense versus being an elite offense and maybe closer to league average defensively. I think the better offensive teams are the teams that are going to give the Lakers problems, because I think there is something to like, you can kind of just pack the paint against them. And as we saw, Houston was able to dictate where some of the shots went. I thought it was telling that the big three took 16 fewer shots than they did against Memphis. And part of that was like a pace and possession thing. But Houston was able to dictate where the ball went to an extent. And then it kind of comes down to like our DFS and Gabe making shots. But I think you have to be able to score on the Lakers. And ultimately, I don't think Houston can do that and would be able to do that in a 7-game series. So I guess with regards to like whether an offensive team or a defensive team would be more troubling for them, how do you view that?
That's a good question. I would add to your point about being able to score against the Lakers to emphasize specifically your ability to space them out.
That's a good point, yeah.
I think the Laker defense is predicated on strong game planning and tilting. You talked about Houston tilting shots in a certain direction, but with the Lakers doing the same thing to their opponent, tilting shots in a certain direction. And when I look through the Western Conference, most of the teams, they have that ability. I mean, even with Aaron Gordon shooting the way he's been shooting, there's the Russell Westbrook thing. And then Christian Braun, even though he's a decent percentage shooter, is a guy that if you throw a closeout out, he probably just won't take it.
Yeah.
So like there's a certain amount of
Peyton Watson too.
OKC, I think, has a little bit of that too, with some hesitance on the perimeter, some of their catch and shoot guys. The teams that have made the Lakers look pretty bad defensively at times have been like Boston, who could really space them out, Chicago, who could really space them out. Some of those other games, like the first 2 games that LeBron and Rui came back, they just weren't playing very well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain amount of them looking bad against some bad teams just because they aren't bringing the requisite defensive energy. But like that's why it's interesting when I look at the Lakers in the Western Conference. I think Denver is going to be able to score easier against the Lakers than they showed in their matchup when everybody played. But at the same time, I still think there's some opportunities to help. There's opportunities to help off OKC. There's plenty of opportunities to help off of Houston. There's opportunities to help off of Golden State. There's opportunities to help off of the Clippers. There's opportunities to help off of Memphis. I mean, Boston did that last night. Boston was just like, go ahead, Santi, take all the threes you want. Like, we're not going to worry about it. So like at a certain point, I'm not as worried about a team in the Western Conference eviscerating the Lakers defense as I am about a Cleveland or a Boston. Ironically, like there, as a matchup sort of thing, Boston is the team I have a really hard time convincing myself the Lakers can beat. But I actually think that their defense can hold up relatively well against most teams in the Western Conference. How do you feel about that?
I agree, and we're about to we're transitioning into the topic of where the Lakers stand in the West right now. In your opinion, I would say the thing I've maintained is like I remain bullish on the offense. It feels like even last night I thought they generated a lot of good looks, even within the constraints of how Houston was defending them. And Houston has the personnel to shift over and also shoot the gap or close out. And they were scrambling well. They were pre-switching. Like I thought they were doing. Like there was one play where Lakers kept trying to target Şengün, and then they kept switching off of him. And then Gabe was almost like running in a circle to finally get Şengün to come up in the screen. And it was like Houston has the athleticism and speed to make things difficult defensively. And down the stretch of that game, they were closing small until they went back to Şengün because the offense just couldn't really score. So I just think the Lakers' offense, to me, with the developing 2 and 3-man game with Luka, LeBron, and Austin, I trust the offense, especially in a playoff series where things slow down and it kind of becomes about talent and execution. I think they can figure things out on the offensive end. I think the defense I have a little bit more concern with because I think it's so predicated on everybody being on a string, everybody like max effort. Like I think that's the biggest thing that stands out when they play lesser teams is they're not giving max effort defensively, and they don't have the margin for error defensively to not give max effort. Like when this team does not give max effort on that end, the slippage is just incredible in like a negative way. So it just becomes a disaster. And that's where I think they'll be locked in on the defensive end, but as you've alluded to, like they just have to give so much effort on that end that I think there is a compounding effect with the offense and the legs that like I just wonder how sustainable that is. And we have seen some slippage more recently where I think it's been like guys have been tired for playing like that for 2 straight months. Like that is a tiring style of defense of just constantly rotating and scrambling and swarming and like they play a very active defense. So you got to do both, right? You can't suck on defense. That's where Denver, like, I think they might just suck defensively and especially against the Lakers, like not have an answer. But if you can do both, that's where OKC, I guess, is such a tough matchup in my opinion. But with where the Lakers are at in the West, they're 3-3 since LeBron and Rui came back. Started 1-3, but have since rebounded with the wins against Memphis and Houston. Where do you currently have them in the West? Where do you think they stack up?
I have them like firmly at number 2 behind OKC. I think that they're a better defensive team than Denver that has a little bit more versatility in the ways they can attack on offense. I don't discount Denver entirely. My biggest issue with Denver is there are just like 3 teams in the Western Conference that they match up absolutely terrible with now, in my opinion, and that's the Lakers and the Timberwolves and the Warriors. So I think there's a version of this where the Nuggets just have too many potential potholes that they could run into and end up getting themselves knocked out. Houston, I don't take seriously. I think they're a first round exit waiting to happen because their offense is so bad. There's a certain theoretical version of the Clippers that can be very good, but I don't think they're good enough on either end of the floor. Memphis is cratering. Golden State, to me, is a team that is very interesting, and I have no interest in playing. I would much prefer to not see them in a series. That said, like most of what makes them a threat is theoretical because their schedule has been so weak since they brought on Jimmy Butler. OKC, I think, even though I'm tempted to pick the Lakers over OKC, should they run into each other in a conference finals, and should the Lakers be hitting on all cylinders heading into that series, I think OKC deserves to be the favorite. I think OKC, if I had to pick right now, I'd pick them over the Lakers. I think they're a clean number 1, but I would have the Lakers in that number 2 spot. I think they just, the other scary thing with the Lakers is I think they have by far the most potential in the league to be a better team on May 1st than they are on April 1st. And I think that goes a long way towards they look good. just cleanly beat two of the best teams in the Western Conference in a row. They've been really good against good teams since the Luka trade. It's been the bad teams they've struggled against. You've very well laid out why that's the case. I think that this team is built for the playoffs too. I thought it was really interesting that we've seen so many examples over this last month where the guy that everybody thinks on the Lakers can't score that they're hiding centers on is Dorian Finney-Smith. And it's like every time they do that, it's like, all right, pick and pop, wide open threes every single time for a guy who's going to hit half of them. And so like I think the Lakers are just really strongly built for that playoff context as well. I'd have them at number 2.
I'm with you. And I think also looking at the conference record, like the Lakers have the second best record against the West in the West, and OKC's number 1, of course, but they're not that far off. They're only a couple games behind OKC. So, and that's with the context of them having that December malaise again, making the AD Luka trade. Like they have some excuses as to why maybe their West record wouldn't be as strong, but they've dominated a lot of these matchups, and they have, with the exception of OKC, who they've only played once, they've beaten the other 6 West playoff teams all at least once, if not a couple times. They have a lot of the head-to-head tiebreakers, so that's another thing here where, it'll come down to whether they can beat Houston next week, but they have the tiebreaker over Golden State, over the Clippers, if they win their division, over the Nuggets, over the Timberwolves. So like they stack up in a seeding perspective. If they can just go 5-2 or so down the stretch here, like they're in a really good position to potentially jump up to number 3 or even number 2, depending on what happens with Houston and Denver. So I think if they can secure a top 4 seed, they're in a really good position to advance. I think the one fear would be getting the 4 or 5 seed and then having to play OKC in round 2. I made the point last night. I think the Lakers are, and this is kind of along the lines of what you were saying, like, I think as they get deeper in the playoffs, they scare me even more. And I think like if we're looking at how LA and OKC would match up in round 2 versus round 3, I would have more confidence in the Lakers beating them in round 3. Now, the one thing that can maybe undermine that would be Luka or LeBron or Austin kind of getting banged up, or those guys maybe just being tired through the accumulation of a deep playoff run. But from like just taking a step back, like from a mental perspective, if these guys have won a couple rounds and have that confidence and have that like identity and blueprint of we've now done it, and they're just brimming with belief in what they're doing, that's scary to me in a conference finals. Whereas like if OKC can maybe catch them after maybe they play the Warriors in round 1 and it's like a 6 or 7 game slugfest, then they get OKC in round 2. I think they're a little bit more susceptible to being beaten. Whereas like, I think the deeper they go, the more confidence I have in them, just because I think at that point they've proven that they like are the team we think they could be, or they're on their way to becoming that.
Yeah, there's also the one other thing that I would say is the conference finals bring the every other day schedule, which can get a little tough.
Yeah,
but I generally agree with you because I think the every other day schedule in the playoffs is easier to handle because there's less flying. Simply because you're not, it's not like a typical road trip where you're flying in between road games. Like you say you're going to Oklahoma City. You're going to Oklahoma City, it's a 2.5 hour flight, maybe 3 hour flight. You go to Oklahoma City and you're there for 4 days. You're not having to bounce around a bunch. There's also, like, as we talked about, like that's an extra, to put it simply, if you play them in late May, you have 7 weeks between now and then to continue to round out this team. That this is a team that's been together for less than 2 months. So if you double the time they've been together, it just adds to the amount of time that they can figure these sorts of things out. I'm 100% with you. I think getting up to the 2-3 should be the goal. You
got to kill the Lakers early. I think you got to kill them early. Otherwise, if they get more time together and more confident, I think you got to try to kill them early if you're OKC or whoever.
There's so much of me that, like, I have this voice screaming in the back of my head that says, don't overthink this. I think about it all the time with this Laker team because it's like, I am blown away by the Lakers' ability to generate great shots. It's just so dramatically different than what the Lakers looked like, even when they were a top 5 offense alongside D'Angelo Russell and with Anthony Davis. Like, that was so much of this like fluid motion and like finding these slight openings and all these really cool ball movement sequences. But like the sheer number of just complete uncontested wide open threes, like they generated 38 catch and shoot looks. It was their second best number of the season last year. It like Gabe in DFS made 12 threes, but like the majority of them were completely unguarded.
Mm-hmm.
And so at a certain point, like I look at it as like, I just trust Luka and LeBron to consistently generate fantastic shots in the postseason. So the question is there a team that can consistently generate better shots against LA than they can on the other end of the floor? And like, OKC, what I look at there is like what scares me with OKC specifically is like the turnover to transition problem. Like the Luka and LeBron and Austin have all had a tendency like to fatigue under ball pressure. And then when they start getting blitzed and trapped, they get a little sloppy with their passing. And then they're just dead meat in transition when they go the other way. And so, like, I think even if they faced OKC and won, there would be 2 or 3 games in that series where they'd get their butts kicked because they would just let go of the rope and lose by like 20. But it's strictly in the half court. Like, I think the Lakers can generate better shots than the Thunder can. That's what I keep coming back to is like, who's the team that can stop the Lakers from getting great shots? That's the real question here.
I think it's Boston, but that's a finals. That's a finals issue.
That's a finals problem. And as we saw in the second half of that game, when they finally started attacking their guards, they immediately worked their way back into the game. I thought most of the Boston problem, and by the way, I would pick Boston over the Lakers. But most of the issue in that game when they were getting their butts kicked was those idiots kept attacking Al Horford. And it's like, you don't have size or speed on him. So why are you attacking Al Horford? Like, this is, as soon as they started going after the guards, they did fine. And so like, I think there's even potential there. Like I view the Lakers as a dead serious top tier championship contender. I view them dead serious. And I think they can get better. So like, I'm trying to temper my own expectations a bit, but I have that voice in my head, Jovan, that's like, don't overthink this.
I'm with you. I after the Denver win in late February, I put them 4th. Like that cemented them as 4th for me. I have not wavered on that. I still have. I mean, I think there's a top 3 with Boston, OKC, and Cleveland for me in that order. But only one of those teams is in the West, which by virtue of that would indicate the Lakers should be a strong contender to make the conference finals. And again, I think it just comes down to where they face OKC. And if it's a little bit earlier and they don't have as much time, maybe they're a little bit more beatable. But if they get them in the conference finals, I think they have a real shot to get to the finals. But you mentioned the offense, and there have been some shifts offensively since LeBron came back. We've seen the ball more in Austin's hands. We've seen a lot more just Austin cooking, and similar to the way that they use Luka, just a lot of high ball screens, and maybe they'll do some decoy actions of screen the screener or kind of these like coming off of a pin down into a screen or something like that. But it basically ends up being, can we attack with Jaxson and try to get a lob or a skip pass for a corner 3? Or is it DFS Rui and it's that guy popping and really testing, like last night, Şengün and Adams' ability to contain in a drop and then also shift out to or rotate out to Rui or DFS. But what have you made of the recent offensive trends and shifts, and where do you think this ends up in terms of the balance between Luka, LeBron, and Austin?
I think it's about allocation of resources. Austin's been hooping. I mean, before last night, in the previous 10 games, he was at 27 points per game on almost 68% true shooting. That's like outrageously good. That's MVP level scoring and production in a 10-game span. And so, or scoring and efficiency, I should say. So there's a certain amount of like, Austin brings that, and he does bring other things. Austin's a closeout attacker. I thought Austin was awesome on defense last night. Austin obviously does a lot, but on the offensive end of the floor, there's a certain amount of like Austin bringing that is more value than him taking spot up threes, playing more off of the ball. So I think LeBron's skill set and his versatility just kind of plugs into these other places on the roster in a way to where it's leading and tilting the team more towards Luka and Austin. That said, I think there's a delicate balance. LeBron has shown some like visible frustration with Austin over the course of the last few games, where like Austin will co-opt a few too many possessions in a row, and LeBron will throw his hands up, or there was one last night where he got Şengün on a switch. And
Yeah,
Austin
I know
waved
exactly
him
what you're
off into
talking
the
about.
corner,
Yeah.
and then he took and he's done various kinds of that sort of body language pouting with Austin over the course of the. It's actually funny because like. It reminds me of his partnership with Mario Chalmers a little bit, where I think even though Austin's way better than Mario Chalmers, like LeBron implicitly trusts Austin, but he also, and LeBron loves playing with Austin, but he also like is very hard on him, and like that's kind of part of their relationship. When LeBron is in rhythm, he's a better player than Austin on offense. We can all agree to that.
Yes.
He's just much better playmaker. He has more resiliency against the top players in the league. I think LeBron's going to have to be really damn good for the Lakers to win the title on offense. And so that doesn't mean take the ball out of Austin's hands. I think LeBron is starting to get his rhythm a little bit more with each passing game. I think a lot of this has been Austin was in full rhythm, LeBron was not. And instead of hijacking Austin's rhythm to force himself back into rhythm, he's been trying to work his way into rhythm on the periphery as much as possible. But ultimately, like, I don't buy into the idea that you can only have two ball handlers in rhythm. I firmly believe that you can keep all three of these guys in rhythm through various roles. And I think a big part of that is like feeling the shifts out. So for instance, like take the Pacers game. In that second quarter stretch, Austin's cooking. Austin starts running a bunch of two-man game with LeBron at the top of the key, and LeBron is keeping the ball in Austin's hands and playing off of Austin because that's what made the most sense in that shift with the way the game was going. And Austin has some sort of personal beef with Indiana or something because he just fries those dudes every time he plays them. And then in the fourth quarter, Austin had that ankle issue, and he was out of the lineup, and so LeBron had his opportunity to be aggressive. He's super aggressive. So I think the biggest thing there is like with each individual unit, with each individual opponent, they need to find out where their best entry point is, not just for the defense, but with the offensive player, and then kind of feel that out and play off of it and like be aggressive with your advantage. Like I think LeBron needs to be really aggressive as a catch and shoot player during this phase too. Because one, they really need him to knock down these threes when they get into the postseason, but also that's a great way for him to get his rhythm while also still ceding control to Austin and Luka when they're on the floor. But like, I think LeBron has just been doing a deft job of not stepping on Luka and Austin's toes while he tries to work his way back into rhythm. I think it's an excellent example of just how much of a winner he is. But I do think that this story ends with LeBron having a lot more control than he's shown in this stretch.
That's what I said last night on my post-game reaction, that I was asked about should they should Austin be the number one option or the primary guy? And I was like, I think Luka is going to be the primary ball handler. Like we have a sample size of Luka just shredding playoff defenses and his team's overachieving with him being the heliocentric ball handler, which he excels at. Of course, there will be less of that just because of how good, how great LeBron and Austin are. But then I think LeBron is going to be the number two ball handler usage guy. And then I think Austin will be number three. Like as you said earlier, don't overthink it. Like LeBron is LeBron. The one interesting thing that like, and I wonder how much of this, of course, part of it's the injury. Part of it is coming, I think, into a new role where he has the ball in his hands a little bit less. But so right now, looking at some of his percentages and how they've shifted from his season long numbers, season number at the rim, 73%. Over these past 6 games, 65%. So that's a notable, and he's missed, like last night particularly, he got to the rim several times and just missed point blank layups, which we know like LeBron is arguably the best finisher of all time, and he was missing like point blank looks. The paint non-rim twos, 45% down to 34%. Mid-range jumper, this is a big one. It feels like he's been able to create some separation, but just not making that shot. Dip from 44% to 29%. And then threes, 37% to 23%. So in several, basically all three levels of the floor, he has dipped about 10 to 15%, depending on the location. And I expect that to regress to his season averages at some point. But given the time off, given the way the offense changed, I think that's like the one thing I'm looking at down the stretch here of, I think we kind of saw this toward the end of the 2023 season, and they still made the conference finals even with LeBron not physically being himself. But like the jumper kind of went during that run. He had to do a lot more, posting up, bully ball, attacking the rim, and getting to the free throw line and stuff to kind of generate his offense. So I wonder if how he gets back to being more himself offensively, and if that just means he has to have the ball in his hands a little bit more just to get that rhythm back, or if he can still do that within kind of being more of an off-ball threat.
So the 2023 season, LeBron shot poorly from the perimeter all year. So I view it as I view it as a little different than this year. That said, like LeBron did hit a shooting slump that lasts a few weeks earlier this season, and I do think he's in one of those right now. I just think he's going to get it back. I would say that I am 25 to 30% concerned about strictly his 3-point shot. But I'm not worried about the rim stuff or anything else. I just trust LeBron to get back to form. And even in the context of that 3-point shooting piece that I talked about, I'm less worried about it now than I was in 2023. In 2023, I thought it was the thing that doomed them in a lot of ways. Not that, they weren't close. They got swept by Denver. But, LeBron's inability to hit...
closest sweep in NBA history.
The closest sweep. But that's
it was a close... It was.
The gentleman's sweep the following year was even closer. The Lakers led that entire damn series, and there was 2 game winners in it. But you want to know why the Lakers looked so much better in that next season? It was because LeBron was hitting jump shots, and Anthony Davis was actually able to score on Nikola Jokic. And a lot of LeBron hit a bunch of clutch jump shots in that series, and it put them over the top. The reason why I'm less concerned about it now is Luka. To me, the dramatic over-the-top jump shooting is part of LeBron's ceiling, and I thought that was mandatory in the AD configuration of this team for them to get anywhere. But with Luka, I think there's so much less pressure on LeBron to just be MVP-level star, and it's more pressure on LeBron to be Draymond Green plus 20 points a game efficiently. That said, I would just feel better about their margin for error if LeBron got his jumper back. So I'm not concerned about the rim, not concerned about his general rhythm, but I am going to keep an eye on his 3-point shot over the course of these next, over the course of the first round too, over the course of this next month, just to see if LeBron can get his confidence back in that spot. Because I do think he's going to need to hit, 40% on 6 attempts a game from 3 in order for this team to win the title. I think that's a good margin for error piece for them.
I just referenced the 2023 season because he was coming off that foot injury, came back with 7 games left in the regular season, and I felt like there could be some parallels there of just not much of a
rhythm
ramp
disruption
to go into the playoffs. But we'll see here. They got 7 games to get him back in a better rhythm. A couple more here before we quickly get into the mailbag. Who do you think is the best potential first round matchup for the Lakers, and who do you think is the worst?
Best, I think, is easily Memphis. There's just talk about entry points. There's just a million entry points for them into that offense or into that defense. And they also have some bigs that they run drop coverage with, which is just death against Luka Doncic in the words of JJ Redick. I'm terrified about Golden State in a first round series. I don't think they can guard Steph. The quick guards have always given them issues, and they have the ability to, whether it's, I don't think they could play Quentin Post because I think Luka would pick him apart in ball screens. But I think there's a version of this where they just, because the Lakers go small, that they just put Draymond and Jimmy on LeBron and Luka and just try to ball pressure the hell out of them. They're another team like OKC that can force turnovers and get out in transition. Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond just as a trio, I think is a group that any team should have a healthy amount of fear of. That's a team I have no interest in seeing for the Lakers, but I think they kick the shit out of Memphis.
I'm with you. I do think for me it's more of a coin flip between Memphis and Houston, because I think I trust Memphis's offense more than Houston's offense, and as I said earlier, I do think there's something to I don't think if you can't score in the Lakers, I don't think you have a shot really against them. I'll lean Houston, but I think it's more of a 1A, 1B. In terms of toughest, I'm with you. I think it's Golden State. I think adding Jimmy changes their small ball look and gives them a legit number 2. And I think one thing the Lakers have kind of been able to do against the Warriors in recent, because they've been successful against the Warriors. Like I think it's been in a comfortable matchup for them relatively, at least in the regular season, and then they had the 2023 series. But they've been able to put a lot of attention on Steph. It kind of sell out on the rest of the group. When that guy's Jimmy, it's a totally different beast. So I think he gives them a true number 2 that can attack. And if it is Steph, Draymond pick and rolls, and then Jimmy's one of the guys in the 4-on-3, that's going to be, I think, lethal against the Lakers style of defense. And to your point, I think they match up worse now. But like, I think Austin's done a decent job, all things considered, the last few years against Steph. But like, I think Max, this is where they might miss Max in that series. So I would say Golden State, they've been a top 10 offense and defense with Jimmy. Part of it is the schedule, but I think that's the team that, like I've talked about, you need to kind of be really good on both ends to beat the Lakers. Golden State projects to be that type of team.
Yeah, Houston, I would agree with you, is an easier first round opponent than Memphis. I guess I was just writing them off because they were higher in the standings, so I didn't view them as a first round opponent. But I would agree with you in that regard.
I guess they could play in like the 4-5 technically, but or if the Lakers drop, they could be like a 3-6. But realistically, they're probably not playing Houston.
I think that Golden State would feel comfortable going to more switching looks too. And I think there's a certain amount of, I think the Lakers by May 1st can potentially be a lot better attacking switching looks, but I think there are ways away from it right now. And if they caught Golden State in the first round, I could see a version of that where they give them a bunch of problems, like a Draymond, Kuminga, Moody, Peyton, Steph look that just, or Draymond's Jimmy, Moody, Gary Payton Steph look where they just switch everything and gap on Steph attacks and just make things really difficult. I frankly just don't want to see him, just especially after what happened in the series in 2023. Like Steph terrifies me. I mean, like that little one leg fadeaway over Anthony Davis goes in, that's a very different series. Like I have a healthy fear and respect of the Golden State Warriors.
Now let's get into the mailbag here. We got over 60 questions, so I appreciate all the submissions. We could only get to a few of them, but we'll zip through. We got about 10 minutes before we got to go. First one, how would LA's offense fare against OKC, Cleveland, or Boston?
So all three of those teams can do a good amount of switching. Like Cleveland will switch with their bigs. I think that OKC has a lot of smaller wings and guards that LeBron and Luka can look to attack. I'm way less concerned about LeBron and Luka generating advantage in terms of getting to the ball against OKC than I am about them just getting the ball out and not turning it over. That's what scares me against Oklahoma City. The Celtics are the team that can switch with size, and that's what scares me specifically, is like, your best bet is Derek White. And by the way, they can attack Derek White and have a certain amount of success there. But like this thing where Luka just can't dribble against Jaylen Brown is kind of crazy. The Tatum and his switchability, Al Horford and his switchability, Drew Holiday and his switchability. They're the team that specifically can switch with size. And I think that's what gives them the ability to make the Lakers specifically uncomfortable. But I also think like Luka would thrive against a Cavs team, against a Garland. I think Luka can throw Evan Mobley around too, with his kind of like thinner frame. I think there's just a lot more entry points against OKC and Cleveland, but specifically all three of those teams would be switching looks. And so a big part of it would come down to shot making and their ability to like quickly get the ball out, because the reads are a little bit more complicated there than they are in pick and roll.
Boston's defense, I think is almost like designed to stop the Lakers or stymie them a bit. You know, I don't think anyone's going to stop them. And we'll never know, because LeBron got injured with 7 minutes left in that game, like how that would have played out. The Lakers were clearly had the momentum shifting in their favor, and still had a shot there down the stretch. OKC, I want to give Dort and Caruso respect because I think those are both two of the best perimeter defenders in the league, two all defense caliber guys, but there's just a size element that makes it so tough to. And I know Dort was solid against Luka last year in the playoffs, but like he can't guard Luka and LeBron, and Caruso obviously is giving up some strength to both those guys. So
and Caruso gives you another guy to help off of too.
Yes, and I mean, so I guess maybe like we've seen teams put centers on LeBron more recently and kind of live with like almost daring him to try to beat them off the dribble or take jumpers, and that's also where LeBron's jumper kind of comes into play in terms of like if he's making that obviously you can't really do that, but maybe they get creative and put Chet or Hartenstein on LeBron, and maybe they put like J-Dub on Luka, and they try to go size, a little bit of a bigger guy, but then that's taxing those guys' legs defensively in terms of like constant ball screens and switching and whatnot, and then maybe that has a compounding effect on the offensive end. So I think there are ways the Lakers can attack OKC. With Cleveland, it's obvious. Like, I mean, it's going to be duck hunting with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Like they're going to look for those two, particularly Garland. But I think Max Strus would also be another guy that they try to target. Any of the non-Mobley, Allen bigs that they play, like they got guys that they could go at with those two.
Cleveland's defense is not on the same level as OKC and Boston. It's not close, in my opinion. Yeah.
Then a couple more. Why is JJ hesitant to trust Jaxson more? And for some context, he's played 32 total minutes the past two games against Memphis and Houston, 18 against Memphis, 14 against Houston. And it seems like he's had a pretty short leash with him defensively. When he makes a couple mistakes or teams target him a little bit, like he immediately pulls the plug on Jaxson.
I think that JJ's dream is to be the Boston Celtics West Coast. I think he's a huge fan of their play style. I think he's generally a huge fan of 4-out, 1-in spacing, but based on drive and kick, not on a lob threat. And I think in general, he views the game through the lens of spacing out the paint. I think that if we had a better version of Jaxson too, I think he'd be a little bit more willing, because I don't think he trusts Jaxson as much in their defensive scheme as well. I do want to say, though, I think it's mostly matchup dependent. Like, I think if the Lakers played Denver in a series, we'd get 20 to 25 minutes of Jaxson just to try to give themselves that lob threat to attack them with. I think against switching teams, there's a little bit less value for Jaxson. So, for example, if you have a guy in the dunker spot, he's still a lob threat, but he doesn't have the runway. And without the runway, it's a little bit tighter of a passing window. It's a little bit tighter of an opening to try to take advantage of. So I think that that's part of it. But I think most of it comes down to just his general basketball philosophy. And I think that he just wants, I think JJ thinks the best lineup is Rui and DFS with LeBron, Luka, and Austin. And I think he's going to lean on that look a ton in the postseason. And I don't think he's wrong, for the record. Like, I think Jaxson gives you a different look, but I think that look is your best defensive look. And I think that look can create true 5-out spacing, or five shooting spacing, even though they typically will occupy the dunker spot. But I think that it mostly just comes down to his Celtics Missoula fetish.
I like that. That's a good point. I think two things I've noticed with Jaxson that JJ has, he was asked about Jaxson yesterday, and he alluded to both of these things. One has been the foul trouble. It feels like he's regressed a little bit on that end in terms of like the big thing with him last season and at the beginning of this season was like just his verticality and the way that he tries to protect the rim. He can pick up just cheap, easy fouls. And I think he got much better with that, especially during the peak of the Lakers defense in January and February and into March. I think he's regressed a little bit lately with picking up some of those cheap fouls. I think with the Memphis matchup in particular, JJ got really pissed off about his defense against Bane early in the third quarter. And you saw with dribble handoffs or screening actions, Bane was just stepping into threes. Jaxson wasn't playing up to the level enough, and he just had a quick hook with that. So, and then another thing has been he's been really odd one with the refs lately, and that was something JJ pointed out of like he's got to get back in transition and stop thinking he got fouled, or after he picks up a foul, then he'll be jawing at the ref and like not getting out in offense, and he just has to kind of calm down with that. But I'm more with you that I think it's more of just a philosophical thing, and I will say I think he should have a certain. I think he should probably play at least 18 minutes a night, if not 20, and there should probably be a little bit of just we need a certain level of size and athleticism. Even if you shift it to him playing more with the bench groups, I think he should have a little bit of a higher floor from a minutes perspective. But it seems to be JJ wanting to play like 30 plus minutes a night of small ball, and that's probably the way this is trending. And then final one before we wrap, this one can be quick, like just preferred players or lineup around the Luka-centric non-starting group, and then the LeBron and Austin-centric non-starting group.
Quickly, I want to say, like, when I say that Luka's, like his inspiration is Boston, I mean that as a compliment. I think everybody should be trying to copy Boston. I think they're probably the smartest organization in the league right now. So I think everyone should be, and I mean that as a compliment. I think that there are some obvious through lines in the sense that I think that Jaxson should be paired with Luka as much as possible because Luka is such a gifted lob passer. And so that just unlocks a value element with Jaxson that frankly wasn't there when Luka wasn't on the team. LeBron was capable of hitting Jaxson in those spots, but LeBron's just not as commanding of attention in ball screens as Luka is. And so the openings just aren't there as much. I like supporting LeBron with athleticism as much as possible because I think that there is more of a defense to transition element with that group. Especially alongside Austin. I like the idea of partnering LeBron and Austin as much as possible because they have a two-man game that teams don't like to switch, which gives them a lot of opportunity to attack there. And if they do switch, LeBron can have a small to attack. Luka's also just a better offensive player, so he can carry a larger offensive load, although I do think that we'll probably see two of them on the floor at all times when we get into the postseason. But as far as the athletes go with LeBron, I think that those are the groups where, like, when you have him out there with like Rui and Vando at the same time and Gabe, and it's just fast and athletic and play defense, get out and transition. When we're in the half court, we lean on LeBron Austin two-man game. I think that makes the most sense. And honestly, I think the Luka and the Goons groups, I think most of that is stemmed from a longer regular season rotation. I think there's a shorter version of that rotation where I like Jordan Goodwin. I'm not 100% sure he should play in the playoff rotation unless a specific matchup commands it. I am not 100% sold on him as a spot-up shooter, and then he's a little mistake-prone. He made a couple of bad mistakes in the second half last night against Houston that were big swings, that turnover against Amen Thompson, and then he got there was another one on offense. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he is he fouled Fred VanVleet. That's what it was. He fouled him on a three-point shot. Mm-hmm. I think there's a shorter version of this rotation where JJ can better balance offense and defense in those groups. But I generally like LeBron with a defensive group that can get out in transition, and I like Luka playing with lob threat.
100% with you. I just looked at the top 8. I think that's the way they're going to go. Starters plus DFS, Gabe, and Vando. That seems to be the way the rotation has trended, especially the last couple games. So Luka with Jaxson, as you said, pairing up the lob threat, then 3 shooters, DFS, Rui, and Gabe. And you have a certain level of size with that front court, and then Luka and Gabe in the back court. And then the LeBron Austin group, I put Vando, DFS, and then Rui or Gabe as the 5th guy. So with Vando and DFS, you are supporting LeBron with the small ball look and giving him a couple of the Banshees out there that could defend multiple positions and rebound and guard bigger guys. And then Rui or Gabe, it just depends on the matchup. Do you need more of a point of attack, smaller guy, or do you want to just mash them inside with Rui and mismatch hunt a bit with that? But I know you got to go, so we will wrap here. Thank you so much for your time, Jason. Outside of subscribing and watching and listening to Hoops Tonight, anything else you want to plug?
No, we're just getting excited for this playoff run. I mean, I was looking at the calendar. We're less than 2 weeks away from knowing what 4 of the playoff series are going to be, and then we're less than 3 weeks away from knowing about all of them. And we'll have to get you on our show before maybe for a Lakers playoff preview or something like that. But it was good to see you, man. I'm love watching everything you're building over there at Buha's Block, and it's always fun talking hoops with you. And I'm looking forward to next time.
I appreciate you. Jason is the best in the business. There's been a lot of talk about NBA coverage and narratives and hot takes and stuff. And Jason is the exact opposite of that. So if you want the substance, go over to Hoops Tonight and check it out. And I'm sure many of you, the people are clamoring for us to reunite. So I'm sure many of the people are already following both of us. But if you're not, check out Jason's work. But thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow with a mailbag. I will talk to you then.